Cheers, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Galentine's Day. Happy Single Awareness Day. I know.
Happy Tuesday.
Well, happy Food Day. Most importantly, happy PS Flavor Club Day. We are so excited you've joined us, Class 2. I'm not sure how many of you were able to join us for Class 1, where we did the wonderful warm winter rubbed pork tenderloin. And now we are whisking you away to the Caribbean. That was really our plan for February, knowing that although don't hate us, it's a little warm here in Orlando. We know there's other parts of this country that's not so warm at all, and you're just dreaming of kind of escaping to the Caribbean. Well, that's what this meal is all about. It's starting with an incredible Caribbean kitchen that we're going to use for a bronzed chicken. We're going to do a little bit of pineapple salsa, pineapple Dijon sauce, if I can say it.
I love this sauce.
So good. So
good.
It's good. So fun.
So fun. Yeah, I actually saw a couple club members posting pictures of shoveling snow today.
Oh, no.
So it may not feel like we necessarily need a Caribbean vacation, but I think they do. So shout out to you guys. We're really happy. We hope you're here with us inside, warm in your kitchen. So from our kitchen to yours, welcome to this amazing, amazing cooking class that we're about to get started with. Now, a couple things to start off. If you have any technical difficulties, if we have any technical difficulties, you have your recipe. Your recipe is both in your book, that hopefully you still know where it is, but if not, it's no problem. You can get on the Facebook group. We have the recipe in color. We have it in black and white. We also gave you a prep sheet, and it looks like this. If you did Class 1, you may have learned the hard way that doing a little bit of prep goes a long way. So if you have done your prep, extra applause from us. If you haven't, just follow along. If you feel like you're getting behind a little bit, it's not a problem. Just pause. The video will be up later. You don't have to worry about this. This is a stress-free cooking zone.
That's our goal all the way through, even to the point of suggesting that maybe if you don't want to do the prep, that you even buy some things pre-prepped. And I know from some conversations with a few of you watching that you were really on board with that and excited. How about that?
That was perfect timing.
Yes.
So that was the oven preheating.
Right.
And so if you haven't yet, preheat your oven. What do you have it on?
400.
So go ahead and head over, click your oven to 400. Now you want to preheat your pan in it. Because
that's right. We already have the sheet pan in the oven ready to go.
Yes, because we're going to start with our vegetables.
Right.
And it was really interesting as we were working on this recipe. There's a lot of things we're going to do, but everything has its place. So it may not be the order that it's in the recipe, and you may find this a lot when you're making recipes, that first time you do it, it's kind of a learning curve of what order you're doing things in. Thankfully, we have the master who's going to teach us the order, and the first thing we're doing is veggies.
It's really one of the questions I get asked most is how do restaurants make it happen? You know, you order a dish, there's 4 people at your table all ordering different dishes, but it somehow comes out kind of at the same time because it's all about staging. So first step is the mise en place list, everything in its place, having all of your prep at least ready to prep. It doesn't mean you already have it prepped. For example, we've got everything kind of ready to cut. Some things we've gotten ahead of the game. Having the oven ready, having the sheet pan, having your pans that you're going to pull. What really throws people off with cooking is not having a glass of wine in hand. Cheers again, by the way. Nicole is drinking a Rosé from south of France, one of my favorite, a Whispering Angel. This is a J Pinot Gris. Both are not only suggested, but highly recommended to go with this dish. So.
And do you want to show them what our dish is that we're going to be making?
Let's do that, absolutely. Again, we kind of got ahead of it a little bit today because we obviously wanted to run through this and make sure that we were very prepared for you. So we have our dish. We have the warm winter roasted vegetables that are a blending of butternut squash and asparagus, some red peppers and onions with that wonderful warm winter spice, which you might remember is a little bit of cocoa and cinnamon, some espresso, beautiful orange. It just brings it alive. We also have, again, the star of the show, if you will, which is the bronzed chicken. It's a pan-seared bronzed chicken breast, different than a blackened chicken, which is just bam in your face, as Emerald used to call it, and created it. Instead, this is a bronzing. It's a beautiful blending of spices that's very approachable. It's got a touch of heat, touch of a spice, as you would expect from the Caribbean, but it's not an overbearing one. Very well balanced. This is the chef's favorite seasoning. Whenever I give these to my top chef friends, they're like, I love that Caribbean seasoning, and they do, and use it in so many things. To really make it just that added Caribbean escape, again, a pineapple red pepper salsa that we're gonna be making, and then a pineapple Dijon sauce.
Perfect.
Pretty special.
I can't wait.
I know, I'll hand that to you, and I think it's time to get started. So, as Nicole mentioned, we're gonna start with the vegetables because we need to get them into the oven. Sheet pan in, 400 degrees. That sheet pan in the oven gives a kickstart to the caramelization that we're going to be wanting to get on the vegetables. This is a blending, as I said, of butternut squash and asparagus and red peppers. One of the things that we encouraged is that you go to the store and you get butternut squash already diced, already cut for you. I hope many of you did that. It's readily available at any store, from Publix to Trader Joe's to Kroger to Fresh Market to Costco. You can just about get it anywhere. Not saying you can't attack your own. You can. Look at this puppy. This is a butternut squash, and you can do it. It's just really something. I truly believe this was God's gift to us. So let's take advantage of that. If you do choose to chop into this, always remember, you're going to hear this continuously as we're prepping vegetables. You always want to keep a straight surface. So we're going to be using knives that will cut through, but you want to cut that end off so that you can have a flat surface. You want to cut this end off so that then sitting it up, you can take that peeling off and then cut it into cubes. I'm going to show you that exact technique when we do the pineapple. It's almost the same thing, and some people are a little intimidated by pineapples.
I always have been.
You really have been.
Yeah.
I mean, you've always have tried to find it cubed, again, fresh, but always pre-cubed or pre-chunked, if you will. But this is one to really try to do.
Are you going to show us?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, we're going to leave that one be because we're going to show the technique
With
later.
the pineapple.
So, okay, if any of you are, do you think some people are struggling? They've got that big old butternut squash?
I'm wondering, but we have Jenna here, and she's taking questions for us. So if you are sitting here thinking, nope, Pam, I really need you to cut that butternut squash for me, jump over to your computer and say, please do it.
But don't try to do it just to be a little mean. I understand that could happen too.
Okay, so
let's move on quickly. Yes.
If anybody does come back and say they need that, we'll come back to it. But then we are going to show you the technique when we get to the pineapple.
Right.
And that technique of having that straight, flat surface and then cutting around.
Absolutely. So we have those cubes of the butternut squash. If you don't want to use butternut squash, sweet potatoes would work here, carrots would work. We could leave them out altogether. New potatoes could work as we're kind of getting close to spring and those gourmet new potatoes come out. That could work out just fine because of all the things we're going to have.
I have a question. When you were holding this gigantic butternut squash,
it's just so big, yes.
I noticed that you talked about cutting it here. Do we not cut into the bulb?
We do. It's just that first you want to get that flat surface,
Okay.
and then you can turn that bulb on its end almost like it was an onion.
Okay.
And you cut it very similar to the onion.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Great.
Okay, so we've got the butternut squash there. I'm going to sit this right over here. And then we're going to get started on the rest of our vegetable prep. Asparagus is in this, and you noticed on the recipe that I suggested that you break the woody stem off, which is the tough part. And it's probably one of those questions I get asked most, where do you just whack it off? Well, I don't. I mean, I literally just break it off. And the question again is, how do you know where right is? Well, the asparagus tells you. You just literally put some pressure on it and it breaks at exactly the point that it becomes tender.
Okay.
So let the asparagus be your guide. Once you get that done, we're going to be cutting these into about 2-inch pieces, and we're cutting them on the bias. We're doing that because it's just a visual. It's really, really lovely to see that together. We're going to be, again, pan roasting it, and it's just really nice to have a little bit of a point of difference. We've got the square cubes, if you will, of the butternut squash. Now we've got this on the bias of this beautiful asparagus. We're going to add to that some onion. The onion we showed in the last class, but if you haven't joined us yet, I'm just going to give you basic dicing an onion 101. The beautiful thing about an onion is it's almost designed to be diced. All that you do is cut the onion in half, peel the paper from that onion, which happens very easily, when it is peeled. But then all you're doing is following the lines of the onion that has already been provided for you. I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm leaving just about a 1/4 inch right at the root end. And why? Because in just a minute, I'm going to be taking this down to a little smaller dice. And what this is doing is it's holding it together. So again, I'm just using the lines of the onion, if you will, to be my guide, kind of like painting by numbers. And then with a very flat hand, I'm using my incredible knife, which we'll talk about in just a moment.
Yeah, this is the Cutco Petite Santoku, and we are going to talk more about that because someone is going to win one this week.
It's our giveaway. Well, I'm going to tell you my favorite knife. I absolutely love it. If you see how great it fits my hand. Again, I cut it just beautifully, but now with very vertical fingers so that I'm cutting against them and not taking anything off.
Yes, let's keep your fingers.
Then just literally take my knife, just running it right through, and you see what I have. I first did some slices rather, and now I'm doing some dices. And it just absolutely is the easiest way in the world to take an onion down, right? When you get to that final end, just take your knife, kind of in a rocking motion, and take the rest of the slice down. But what you've done is you've come up with a very quick and easy way to dice onion. And you just can't do it easier than that. It's
That's
like
great.
food processor move over.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Pan process.
Yeah, exactly. So then you just add that. We're going to be using some of this onion for our pineapple red pepper salsa. So I'm going to reserve just a couple of tablespoons of that to mix in, but this is going to go into our warm winter vegetables. Then we'll move on to our peppers. Now, peppers also very easy to do. We also showed this in the first class. And all you're doing, back to keeping that flat surface, is you're cutting the top of the pepper off, you're cutting the bottom of the pepper off, and then, again, with your knife, rather than trying to scoop out those seeds or the core, you literally just cut the sides of the pepper, leaving those veins in, away from those seeds. So it's the simplest and the easiest way to be able to dice, again, or strip a pepper, whichever way that you're wanting to do it. Once you get these done, you have little planks, and you just literally want to line those up. And again, with a rocking motion, literally just go through these, keeping, again, your fingers at a very vertical way so the knife just goes against them. Once you get those nice slices, you then turn them, kind of line it up a bit, and now you cut it into some dices. These dices you can make as small or as large as you want to do. We're going to make these a little small because they're going to end up going into our pineapple red pepper salsa. But the other, we're going to be using a little larger chunk because that's going to end up being roasted. And so that you don't have to be quite as careful with. You can just take it into some pretty large chunks because you really want to experience the best of that. And that is done.
Wow.
I know, easy, quick, we're ready to remove. While we're doing our cutting, it's a really good idea to go ahead and do it all. Even though we already have the butternut squash, we already have the asparagus, the peppers, the onions. While I've got my cutting board going, I'm going to go ahead and move into cutting the pineapple and the Roma tomatoes for the salsa. But first, we want to get these vegetables into the oven.
Okay.
So again, it's at its nice 400 degrees. We heard by the ding, ding, ding. We'll add our asparagus that we have already cut. We'll add the larger cut of the roasted red pepper. Again, the equivalent of about 1 pepper. Isn't that just beautiful?
It is.
And then a little bit of our onion.
And is this a place that if someone maybe isn't a huge fan of onions, they could do a larger dice so that they could, you know, especially if they had someone in their family, maybe one of their kids that always says, I don't like onions, this would be a good place to leave it a little larger.
Leave it out so it can be pulled apart, or just leave it out. That can be done too. There's so much flavor in the warm winter that you really don't have to put onion or even garlic in, which is a really happy celebration for many people. Speaking of warm winter, could you pass me that?
Absolutely.
And again, the warm winter is going to be our salt and pepper. It's a rub, but in this case, we're using it as our salt and pepper for these vegetables. We're putting about 1.5 tablespoons onto this. We're then going to use just a little drizzle. Oh my goodness, the aromatics of this are fantastic. Doing just a little drizzle of olive oil. And literally just toss that together to coat the vegetables. No need for salt, no need for pepper. There's so much flavor in the warm winter, and when this starts to roast in the oven, you feel like you have one of those little mulled spice things on the counter. It just has so much beautiful fragrance and aromatic. And you just do that until you kind of see it coating all of the vegetables. Good to go?
Yes.
Okay, let's get that in the oven. Again, this is already set at 400, and all that we're going to do is literally just get this in. You're going to hear that nice sizzle going. Got someone with the camera behind me, so I'm feeling a little unsure about getting this all into the oven. Perfect.
But that's really where the difference is between having a hot sheet pan and doing all this on your countertop and then putting it in.
Right.
Is you immediately got that sizzle.
And that sizzle is the sign that we're getting the caramelization. Otherwise, what happens is the pan and the vegetables heat up at the same time. And in the process of that, you end up steaming the vegetables. So you have this kind of mushy, it's roasted, but it's just not scrumptious like you get in a restaurant. But this is going to make it scrumptious. These are going to roast for about 12 minutes. So Jenna, I know you're watching for questions, but if you would keep your eye on time, that would be fantastic to do as well.
All right, so about 12 minutes.
About 12 minutes. We'll check them at right around 6.
Okay.
And we'll be in a really good place there. Okay, so as promised, let's move on. Let's do the tomato next, because the tomato is going to go into our our pineapple salsa. These are Roma tomatoes. I use all kinds of tomatoes for all kinds of things. Beautiful vine-ripe beefsteak tomatoes for tomato caprese. I love little cherry tomatoes to roast or to put into salads. Of course, grape tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes. Romas are great for salsas because they have more meat. They've got more flesh to them. They're pretty seasonal. You can get them almost any time. This particular one, I'm going to be using the serrated knife, which is a absolutely beautiful thing to do with tomatoes because you see how easily it cuts through the tomato. Same principle, cutting the top off, cutting the end off, and in the process of that, I'm exposing now this. Now, because it is a salsa, I'm going to go ahead and pull some of the seeds out. I like salsas to be able to be used for a good 3 to 5 days if there's any left over. The seeds tend to water it down because there's so much moisture in play, and it gives kind of a different texture to it. So I just pull those out very, very easily. And then similar that I did with the peppers, literally cut them into slices and then into dices. How easy is that? Slice and dice.
And you said you're using the serrated knife, which for What we're using is the trimmer.
Right, the
which
trimmer.
Kate Rasnick won.
Yes.
Kate, if you are cooking, we hope you're using your knife.
It's awesome. We used it with our first class to trim the silver skin from the pork tenderloin. And not only am I using it with our tomatoes right now, in just a minute I'm going to use it to trim any extra fat from the chicken breast.
Great.
I mean, these two knives, honestly, my go-to knives. Love
especially with the
these
red
knives.
handles.
And especially with the red handles.
Okay, so you're getting your tomato all done.
All set to go. And then we move on to the star of this pineapple salsa, which is our pineapple itself.
Okay, well, I will keep the Nicole cam going because I think we're going to want to
I think you are, because again, this is one of your favorite foods, but it's also one of your most frustrating ones, right? It's knowing what to do with it. So first of all, how do you pick a ripe pineapple? Many of you know this. You can pick up tips anywhere, but first thing you want to do is pick it up and take a little whiff of the bottom part. It should be, first of all, a little bit of a golden color, but it should also be very fragrant. It should smell like a pineapple. If it doesn't, you know, it's been picked, and pineapples really don't get more ripe after they've been picked. They just get rotten. So again, you want to get one that has been picked at its best. The other thing you want to do is pull these little leaves out from it. If they pull easily, then that means it too has released and let go. So that's a really great thing to do. And I oftentimes go into a store and I see all the leaves missing from a pineapple, and it's like, well, somebody's been trying to check. Once you get that done, you're sure you've got it. A nice ripe one, oftentimes golden shell is what I use, and I think that's what we suggested in the recipe. Then again, you want to use the same principle. You want to cut through it with your knife, take that stem end off. When I was small, we used to plant these in our backyard when we would cut them off. Never ever saw one come up, but it was always that hope, right? If you believe in your heart, right? And then you cut the bottom part off. And then, this is the same principle that we would do with that butternut squash, the same idea, because it's a very firm end. Then with your knife, you want to literally just go down. See how flat it is? Very safe. You want to go right down the edges, trying to leave a good amount of those eyes, if you will, on the peeling rather than on the pineapple. You know, you can buy those pineapple cores. You see all kinds of little fancy kitchen gadgets, which for the most part just stay in the drawer. Garlic press is a perfect example. I mean, this is just so easy to do. And if you look at the price difference between these that are already chunked, which I know you have bought before, this is a much better way to do it. Once you get that cut away, then with your knife, while it's still flat, you go straight down the middle, and now you have two now flat surfaces. Let's get rid of this. And yeah, you'll see a few little extra things here. Just kind of cut those away, easy to do. And also flat surface, now you're going to want to cut it into quarters. Once you cut it into quarters, also flat surface, you then want to use your knife just to cut away at the core. And it just literally slices right away. Done.
Beautiful.
Right? Once you get the core cut away, now you have a really easy way to just run your knife right through it and cut your first some chunks. We're going to use some chunks for our salsa. And you see this is, or not our salsa, but our sauce. And you see that's very, very easy to do. We're going to do a little finer dice for our salsa though. I'm going to hold this up so I can take that core out of it because I want a little bit of a flatter edge since I'm going to be doing a dice, but the same principle. Slice. See how beautiful this knife runs through? I'm not hacking at it, right? I'm just running the knife through it. You want to let the knife do the job. And then once you have the slices, you turn, and again, holding your hands at a vertical, you run it through to get that nice, beautiful, and small dice. And it's this dice that's then going to go into the salsa.
So we really did more like a 1-inch dice for the sauce because we're going to put that in the blender.
Right.
And then a 1/2 inch-ish for the salsa.
Exactly. And again, you don't really have to do much of anything for what's going to go into the blender because it's going to do the job.
Okay.
But you just want to get it enough that you can feed it in, and it works really, really beautifully. So we've got our dices and we've got our chunks. Jenna, how are our vegetables doing?
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay. So that means they've been in probably for about 7. Probably a good time to maybe check them and see how they're doing. And that's always a good thing to do because what you're wanting to do is to be able to kind of turn them around just a little bit. Again, because the pan was very hot when it went in, you want to be able to really get the exposure of that. Oh, look at
That
that.
looks beautiful.
Don't they? Oh my gosh, you get that over aromatic? How beautiful is that? So literally, you can hear the sizzle. And you can see some of the caramelization on the yellow squash particularly is where you're starting to see it. You'll see it coming a little bit later on. Some of the vegetables have a little more water like the asparagus and the red pepper. Lovely, right? Okay, so let's let that go for another, 5 minutes or so. You'll know that it's done, not just when you have that caramelization, but also when you're able to have the butternut squash become fork tender.
Okay.
And that's the case if it's broccoli or cauliflower or Brussels sprouts, anything that you might be using. So absolutely perfect. Let's get our pineapple chunks in play and ready to go. And then we'll get started on our chicken. Now, this is a pretty, universal way that I cook chicken. You've certainly have seen it all over your life because it's very much what happens in restaurants where rather than looking to the pan to do all of your work, instead you're letting the oven do your work. So we're going to be using the pan to sear the chicken.
Okay.
But then we're going to be using the oven to finish that off. We've got some really, good size chicken. And so we want to be able to get that into the oven, but rather than getting it overcooked on the outside and then undercooked on the inside, the oven gives an overall cooking capability.
And are we cooking the chicken at 400 also?
We are.
Okay.
So oven stays exactly the same. We're absolutely good to go. Now you'll note that I cut all of my raw product that's not going to be cooked on the cutting board first. Now I can put my chicken on the cutting board. Otherwise, if I was going to be doing both at the same time, you definitely want to use 2 cutting boards. But I've done all of my raw product here. So now I can add my chicken breast.
Okay.
Okay. Now, these happen to be antibiotic-free chicken breasts that are done without any hormones, they were grass-fed, but that's, again, completely based on the choice that people make. But as I said, they're good size. The concern about that is making sure that you get them cooked all the way through, because when they're that large, they're going to take a little longer to cook than if it was a very thin, small, let's say chicken tenderloin.
Okay.
Okay.
And with chicken, you want to cook it a little bit longer than maybe even the pork tenderloin that we did last time.
You do. Generally, I'll take a pork tenderloin or a steak out of the oven at about 130, 135, and then the carryover cooking will bring it up to about 140, 145. But with poultry, be it chicken or turkey, I generally try to take mine out more like 160. I'm wanting it to be at 165 minimum.
Right.
That's kind of the minimum that you want for poultry. So that's a little bit of a different thing. We do have our thermometer that we'll be checking to see. These have been patted dry. Not everyone does this, but I do kind of look and tend to cut off, again, with my trimmer, any of the extra fat that might be in place. Some people find that to be just little flavor pockets, and that's certainly fine to do too. I just find that particularly when there's a little membrane there, tends to change the overall texture of the eating experience. So I tend to take any of that extra off. And again, the trimmer is just so perfect for doing that. So Kate Rasnick is ruling right now.
I know. She should be very excited.
Exactly. So how are you going to do this next knife giveaway? Have you decided?
Yeah, we're gonna, this is kind of our chef's knife that we're doing. So we've been gearing up to this one, excited. And what we've decided to do is, what we've decided to do first before I talk about it is check the veggies, because we just got the signal that it has been 12 minutes. But do you want to put your seasoning on first?
Yeah, let me do that. So I'm putting the equivalent of about 1.5 teaspoons of seasoning on these chicken breasts, each one. So I usually put 1 teaspoon on the top side. And there's a reason that I do it a little different for the bottom side. Then I flip them over. And the reason I do a little bit less on the next side is because you're losing some of it. I'm gonna then roll it, and I'm gonna make sure that I get all of that Caribbean kitchen goodness. This one I'll just do about 1/2 teaspoon. This is a kitchen blend. It's different than our rubs. With that, we tend to use it like we would salt and pepper. So it's not quite as liberal of a use as we would do with the warm winter, for example, as we did with the pork last time, where we're wanting every part of that pork to be covered. This, we're wanting it to just be covered, but to be more seasoned. That's what the kitchen blends do.
So a little more than maybe salt and pepper, but a little less than a rub, where you would really be covering everything so that you can't even see.
You really wouldn't even want to see, the flesh of it, because you want the rub to be so there. But this, and then you notice I literally just rub and take all of that additional up. And the interesting thing about protein is it only takes what it can handle.
Okay.
So it won't take more. So you don't have to worry about over seasoning. It kind of just takes what it's going to do. So those are kind of ready to go.
Okay.
And next up, let's go ahead and get the vegetables first checked on. Oh my gosh. These are incredible. So easy to do. And again, it's kind of a one-pan wonder, right?
Well, I love how the asparagus stays so green. I feel like often when I talk to people about vegetables, there's just this overwhelming feeling that they lose all their vibrancy when you cook them.
Right.
Is it the roasting process that keeps it, or because your pan is hot? What is it that's keeping them so vibrant?
It's the pan hot.
Wow.
So the same principle applies if I was going, which we're going to do actually in just a couple of months for our spring PS Flavor Club, we're going to do pan-seared asparagus. And similarly, you would just have this olive green color happening with it. Well, the reason that is because when you get it into the pan, cold, again, same principle, it starts to steam. The process, it loses its chlorophyll. Whereas if you can get that in a really hot heat, when we pan sear it, I'm going to blanch it first.
Okay.
I'm going to immerse it into into hot boiling water for just a few seconds, just enough to seal that chlorophyll. I sometimes do that in a microwave
I've
too.
seen you do that.
But it just seals that chlorophyll. In the roasting process, you don't have to do that because as long as your pan's hot. But if it's not hot and you put broccoli in or asparagus or green beans, they're just going to come out olive drab.
Okay.
So not the goal
Right.
by any means. Okay, so we have our chicken breast already seasoned, all ready to go. So now we're going to do a little bit of fancy work here. And we're going to start to move some things around.
And while we do that, I feel like we teased, but I didn't say what we're doing with this knife, the Petite Santopia.
Yes.
So we've decided that every day this week, we're going to give you different opportunities to get entries for the drawing. So everybody, just by being in the club, immediately entry. But then we're going to have a few more ways that you can. The first is going to be posting a picture of yourself member with your meal that you made, or if you don't want to be in the picture, that's okay, but posting a picture of your meal completed, and that will get you another entry.
Which a lot of people did last
It was so fun. It was our
So
favorite
much
thing.
fun. It
It was
really was.
watching how proud everybody was of your meal. It's kind of the whole reason why we're doing this. We want you to be so proud of what you make.
And what we found is that people not only posted the pictures that night, but because a lot of people weren't able to see, for a variety of reasons, some of them technical difficulties, weren't able to see the full class later, a week later, 2 weeks later, did the class on the archive, made their dish, and then posted it. So much fun.
So fun.
I can't tell you the joy that that gives to us, right? It's really, really amazing. Got my pan on. Probably should have put the pan on a little bit earlier, because the goal is to get your pan, whenever your pan's searing something, smoking hot. I mean smoking hot. No oil in it yet. I want to let the pan come to heat. You can use either a nonstick pan, or you can use a traditional pan with a little spray of nonstick
So you
spray.
have already put your nonstick spray.
I have, yes.
But not your olive oil.
But not the olive
Okay.
oil. So we're gonna let that come up to a nice high heat. Again, to the point, because what I want to do, similar to what I said about the asparagus, I want that chicken to hit, and immediately for that Caribbean kitchen seasoning and the protein that's the surface of the chicken breast to start to caramelize.
Okay.
There's sugars in it, and it immediately starts to caramelize and brown. But if you don't have your pan hot enough, you never can go back. You can't ever do that. Next month in March, we're going to be doing seared scallops with corn risotto, which I'm so excited about, because scallops are probably the question we get asked the most about. How do I sear scallops like restaurants do? Interesting, Gordon Ramsay, if you ever watch any of his shows, there's a couple of hot buttons for him. Scallops are one of them, because to him it's the cutoff point of saying, are you a chef that really knows technique or not?
Okay, so
And
we're going to learn technique.
we're going to learn technique.
I like
We're going
it.
to learn it first with the chicken breast,
Okay.
and then we're going to go into like technique 2.0 when we do the scallops.
All right, so we have our 101.
Yes, so
Get
we've
ready.
got the hot pan. We're going to add just a little drizzle of olive oil to that. We already have the chicken breasts that have been seasoned, and they're just waiting for us. I'm going to grab those. The oven is already hot. I'm going to just add that. A little bit of
love that
sizzle. It's
sear,
a
yeah.
nice sear. It's kind of saying, it's talking just a little bit. Gonna get that into the pan. Kind of let it start working its magic.
Now, we were talking earlier that at this point, most pans are okay to go in the oven, but not all.
Right.
And so if yours is not okay to go in the oven, now would be a time you probably want to take a little pause, get a sheet pan that you can put in the oven to get really hot, because you do want that heat before you put the chicken on. So if it's already like this, you're good. You don't need to do anything. You can put it directly in the oven. Otherwise, get a sheet pan nice and hot, let it stay for a minute, and then you can transfer your chicken from your stovetop to your oven.
Right. Most pans today are oven proof. Back in the day, they used to have little plastic handles, and those tended to want to melt, in the oven. But now that's not generally the case. Cast iron is always a good choice, especially if you have an induction cooktop, because induction only cooks with stainless or cast iron. But with that, similar, you start it on, and then you get it right into the oven.
Great.
So while we've been chatting, we've been letting these just start to sear on the one side. You want to let that sear for about a minute or two, and then with your trusty tongs, want to just flip those breasts. Oh my gosh, can you get those aromas?
It's amazing.
I'm hoping, again, as you all are doing this at home, you're picking up some of the same kinds of aromatics that are in this room. It's really beautiful. So you see, all that we were looking to do is just get that nice brown caramelization. Gonna let that go just another minute or two on this side, and then we're gonna pop it into the oven. The oven's still set at 400, and so we're gonna let the oven kind of do our cooking. Generally, chicken breast will cook in the oven in about 10 minutes. It's really fast cooking if you do this, as compared to baking chicken breast, which might take more like 25, even 30 minutes. But because you're getting that high heat cooking of the sear, it kind of speeds it along. These are so thick that they may take a little bit longer, so that's why we're gonna make sure we use our thermometer to tell us that these are really done. So again, just that couple of minutes extra, and then we're going to pop those right into the oven.
And that's where using the thermometer really is important because, people have asked us before, well, why don't you just tell us how long to leave it in the oven? And although we can give you a best guess, we don't want you to accidentally eat raw food. We don't want you to overcook it either. I mean, almost the same. In fear, we want you to have a perfectly cooked meat. And so we do suggest getting a meat thermometer if you don't have one yet. And digital, even better, only because it's faster.
Yeah, we use a digital one, and it's awesome. One that just kind of pops right up. It's even easy to store, and then you turn it on, gives you the digital. I found that in the old school where you had the thermometer that was analog that just had to kind of keep building, I was cooling the oven and heating the whole house while I was standing there waiting for it to tell me how done my turkey was.
Right.
The digital just is a little quicker.
And this is one that you just got on Amazon, I think, and it's called a Therm Pro, and I believe it was somewhere around $12.
11, I think it was on a Black Friday special.
And of course red.
And of course red. Of course it's red. So it's going to be a little noisy. This is a little noise alert, so if you want to be aware of that, hopefully you're going to have the same noise going too. But I want to get us started on making our pineapple Dijon sauce. Again, one of my favorite sauces. This just is what takes this whole dish and elevates it to a different place. Using the same ingredient, pineapple, using some of the same spices, citrus spice in both the salsa and in the sauce, but the texture change that comes with this velvety sauce, you would just never believe that pineapple could turn so just sumptuous. It's really, really beautiful. Using a blender, a Ninja, you can use whichever blender or food processor you might have. I tend to do both. What you want to do first is just get your ingredients in play. We're going to use just a little bit of honey.
Okay.
The honey is pretty much based on what the sweetness of your pineapple is, so it's a good idea to taste it first. You can always add honey. You can't take it away.
Right.
So important to do. The citrus spice has a little bit of sugar in the raw, so with that, you're going to be getting just a little touch of sweetness there too. So careful with the honey. We tend to recommend local honeys. We use an orange blossom honey here because we're in Florida, but whatever honey that can kind of work for you. Also going to add some Dijon mustard. Now this is the Dijon part of this, but it's serving a purpose. It's not just to give that wonderful kind of taste. It's also an emulsifier. What's emulsifier, you say? Well, it's the same reason I use Dijon mustard in vinaigrettes. The pineapple has a lot of water content. The olive oil is oil. Oil and water don't mix. You've always heard that. But Dijon mustard is the glue, if you will, that holds it together. So that's a really important part of this sauce. We've got the honey. We have the Dijon. We want to use just a little touch of citrus spice.
So we did about 1 tablespoon honey, this is straight from your recipe.
Yes.
2 tablespoons of the Dijon mustard.
And how much citrus spice?
Ooh, 2 tablespoons of the citrus spice.
Okay, I'm gonna add 1 more tablespoon then. Now in the pineapple salsa, we use both the citrus spice and Caribbean Kitchen.
Okay, great.
And that's giving just a little bit of extra hit.
Yes, so it says about 1 teaspoon of the Caribbean Kitchen.
In the pineapple salsa.
In the Dijon sauce.
In the Dijon sauce. Thank you, Nicole, for following the recipe. That's a beautiful thing. Here we go. Got it right here.
Oh, great.
Caribbean Kitchen. Yeah, I was going to mix that
See,
up.
we got to keep her honest.
I know, it's so hard.
So just about 1 teaspoon
done.
in the Dijon sauce.
Okay, man, the disaster we could have had. We're gonna let that just do a little.
And you're holding
blending.
on the pineapple.
I am right now.
Okay.
Just for 1 second.
And you're also holding on the olive oil. I know from watching you make make dressings and blending different things, that holding on the olive oil is really important.
It is, and that's because, back to the mustard action, we're wanting to have the olive oil emulsify into the brew, and that means adding it very, very slowly. So, it's a ninja, so getting the top one right
Always.
is very important. And so then with this,
Okay, so then you're just blending it down.
ninja after all. Just for a minute, because wow, is that loud?
Yes.
I know.
And we can thank Curtis, who is doing all of our audio, visual, and
Yes.
everything people always see, because he was covering the microphone for us.
He was trying. I'm gonna add my olive oil slowly. Drizzling it in. Turning it up. Turning it up. Handing up it.
It's amazing.
Doesn't it? But again, what you end up getting is just this beautiful velvety sauce that I just don't know that you could look for another way. You've got some tasting spoons there.
Yes.
One thing really critical with everything is to taste. I'm pretty clear on how the roasted vegetables are going to taste. I've done those so much. I know exactly the proportion.
I love this sauce.
You are going to love this. So
good.
right? Okay.
This is truly one of the things I'm most excited for you all for this class, is just to be able to have this sauce, because you can use it on so many things. It doesn't have to stay just with this meal. You can really spread it out and use it on a variety of proteins. And
yeah, it's beautiful. Again, we're going to paint the plate with it. It makes an incredible pineapple vinaigrette, which, again, it's one of the things that we really want to get you all excited about, is how you can work some leftovers in some of your things. I know a few of you were very innovative last class and took that beautiful tart cherry chipotle chutney and turned it into a sauce and pureed it down just like this. Really great things that can be done.
yes.
Okay.
All right, so we
Okay.
have our sauce.
Did you like it?
Loved it.
Had everything going, right?
Yes, and now if you did want to make it sweeter, let's say that your grocery store didn't have any of those perfectly golden, ripe pineapples, would adding more honey be the place, that would be what you would want to do?
Add a little more honey, or you could add a little more citrus spice.
Okay.
Either one of those, depending. Citrus spice has a beautiful blending. It's I mentioned some turbinado sugar, but also has coriander, which are the seeds of cilantro. Which goes beautifully with the cilantro that's going to be in the salsa, ginger, some cumin, it's thyme, it's beautiful. And then of course that beautiful citrus,
Right.
both lemon and lime, which again brings out what's going to be in the salsa.
Great.
So really great. Okay, we've got our chicken going. We have our sauce made. Our vegetables are already done. So time to get to work on our salsa.
Which is the last part of the meal.
It is. We're
Already.
pretty much
I know.
done here. We can try not to let that butternut squash take over our life. A little space challenge. We've been able to do our classes in a variety of kitchens, and we love that. It's that whole notion of from our kitchen to yours. So we've loved coming into different kitchens. This is our pineapple that we've already have diced, and that's going to be the base of our salsa.
And this was the smaller dice. This was the
Right.
half inch
as compared
dice.
to the chunks
Okay.
that are there. A little honey that's going to go into this as well. And
Okay.
again, back to the same principle. You want to let the honey kind of be used based on need.
Okay.
If your pineapple is super, super, super sweet, may not need much honey at all. We're going to add a little bit of our citrus spice to this as well. I don't think, now that you've told me, that we have any Caribbean kitchen in this, right?
Well, we could, based on the recipe, put a couple teaspoons in
Okay,
to
let's
get a little
do
bit more
it.
heat. Again, trying to use those kitchen blends, the Caribbean, Creole, adobo, using them as your salt and pepper, so that you're not needing to go back and add more to this. This is your flavor, it's your seasoning, all together in your box kit.
Okay, so now we're going to use about 2 teaspoons of the Caribbean.
Okay.
But then we're also going to add a little bit of citrus. And I know some of you, when you opened up your winter kit, you might have questioned, what in the world do I do with this? Well, let me show you. If you've not used it yet, again, that's exactly what we're going to do. I think you posted a tip today.
I did,
Yeah.
because I love your microwave tip.
So we've taken our oranges and our limes, popped them into the microwave for about 30 seconds. What it does is inside out, it bursts open those flavor cells. So you get much more juicing action than you would do. I know some of you squeeze and rub and roll the limes, but by giving that microwave action, you just release that juice and you end up getting much, much more. I mean,
Wow.
look at how it just like comes out. And this is how you work the citrus squeezer, by the way. Literally cut it in half across the horizontal, and there you go.
Great. Now, with the orange, I noticed that you squared it.
Well, because an orange is so big. I mean,
Right.
I can do this easily with clementines, but I can't do it as well with oranges. So I cut it just into quarters, and very similarly, there
And
you go.
even the orange you put in the
I
microwave.
did, popped it right in, works out perfectly.
And how much are we trying to get here?
We're getting the juice from 1 lime and the juice from 1 orange.
Oh, great.
So generally 1 lime has about a 1/4 cup of lime juice, and an orange will give anywhere from a 1/2 cup to sometimes 3/4 cup, beginning on the size. This is a large orange, so I'm going to be using 6/4, which is probably more the equivalent of a 1/2 an orange,
Okay.
because it's so big.
Yeah, it's a nice Florida navel.
Beautiful navel, which we did get some weather, so it did give us a chance to get some sweetness to it as well. Okay, so that's squeezed. We've got our citrus in. We probably should go over and give our chicken just a little bit of a glance to see how it's doing.
I think that we had a little alarm going off to tell us it is time.
Oh, is that what the alarm was?
Yeah.
I love that. Wonder what I might have done with that little thermometer.
Oh, I have it right here.
Oh, you were stealing my
I kept the
thermometer.
thermometer.
That is dangerous. Okay, so again, I'm gonna put it in the thickest one because that's the one I'm most concerned about. And wow, it's already up to 150.
Okay.
I'm gonna check the thinner one. And that one is already up to 155, no surprise, but I'm still gonna leave this in for just about another 5 minutes or so. It's gonna have some carryover cooking. Carryover cooking will let it take on another 5 degrees or more. But we'll let that go because we still need to finish our salsa.
Yeah, we may as well finish.
So we have our spices already in. We've added our citrus juices, a little bit of the diced red pepper.
Which you already did at the beginning.
I did right at the beginning. And a little bit of our tomatoes as well. Actually, that was the tomatoes I just added. So I'm going to add our diced red pepper to this. If you're not a red pepper fan, as Nicole is not, certainly can leave that out. Red peppers, though, generally are much milder than the classic green pepper, so no need to fear that. A little bit of red onion that we already had chopped at the beginning, and the jalapeno. We did not talk about chopping that. We did that at our first class, but the same principle applies as we did with the red pepper. You cut the top, you cut the bottom, and with your knife, literally cut away from the seeds, cutting away at those veins that are in it, because that's where the heat is. Now, if you like the heat, the more the better. Keep the seeds in, keep the veins in, but if you're a little timid about that, and Every pepper's a little bit different. Generally, the smaller the pepper, the hotter it is. This is a pretty good sized pepper, so you probably could use at least a half of this. If it's a smaller pepper, even going down to Serrano or habanero, be very careful because a little bit certainly goes a long way and you can never take it out.
But if they, and by they, I mean me, because I'm the one who likes a little less heat. So I would cut this and try to get the veins and the seeds a little less. I'd focus more on the flesh.
On the flesh, because that's where the sweetness and a little bit of the citrus notes of the pepper really lie. If you're sensitive to heat, you might also wear gloves when you're cutting that jalapeno. It's certainly a serrano and most definitely a habanero because the oils are where the heat is.
And definitely wash your hands after.
Definitely wash your hands. So, and then a little bit of chopped cilantro as well.
Which we used our super shears for. I watched you
just snip, snip, snip. We'll do that again when we get to the end. And then a little magic little tit is just a little bit, if you choose, of coconut rum, because we're in the islands, Mom, right? It's Caribbean, it's February, it's what we're doing. So that little hint of coconut rum just absolutely can just take it to a different place. And I'm talking just a teaspoon. If you don't want to use the rum, don't have the rum, don't choose to not make the recipe because of it, just leave it out and don't use coconut extract.
Okay, so don't replace,
Don't
just
replace,
use it.
just leave out. You really will not know the difference. There's so much flavor in here, but I just love that little extra depth of flavor and that little, I don't know, little extra touch.
Je ne sais quoi.
That's it, exactly. So that's done. And this salsa can be used on everything from a burger to a turkey sandwich. I mean, it takes the usual and makes it so incredible. Wow. This is like my go-to salsa. Love, love, love it. And you know, we're used to salsas. We're used to pico de gallos. The pineapple is what just adds that little extra touch.
And it really is almost like a pineapple pico de gallo. It's got that chunky, beautiful dice, the cilantro.
All
really
good things.
Delicious.
Absolutely. Okay, we're good?
Yeah. Did you want to
taste it? I do.
Always. I'm going to check the chicken.
That's what I did. I think the chicken's about ready to come out, but let's give a little taste of this. Oh my gosh. So good.
Perfect.
Didn't you think?
We hope it's perfect at home for
I
you
know.
too.
We think it definitely
It doesn't
is.
need anything from me.
No.
It's just right.
Okay. Not too spicy? Okay. Gonna put this back.
Mom knows she's always done well when she likes the heat of it and then she asks me, not too spicy?
Yes. I always put it in a positive thing. Okay, ready to plate this puppy?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get that all ready to go. But first, I'm gonna get the chicken out because I'm quite sure it is ready now. Now, again, I will tell you, we're using a thermometer, but in a restaurant setting, we would just do this. We just touch it, and if it springs back to touch,
Let me come over and show.
it springs back to touch and it doesn't stay very indented, that's one of your signs that it's done. You will see thermometers used in a professional kitchen, but oftentimes the chef is just touching the top of it and seeing what kind of give is actually
And so
there.
you really want it to bounce back. If it doesn't bounce back, you've maybe overcooked it a little.
Well, no, if it stays, if it's too, if you push it down, it stays indented, then that's a sign that it is not done.
Okay.
If it's hard as a rock, that's your sign that you've overcooked it. Yes.
I mean, I've never done that.
Yes, hello.
I'm glad we had the Nicole.
I hope that you got that, Curtis. That was really exciting.
Oh, we have a question.
Yes. Like, how do you destroy a kitchen? Yes.
Hi. Mary Beth is wanting to know exactly how long your leftover salsa will last in the fridge.
About 3 to 5 days. If you are wanting to use it for taking it all the way to that 4 to 5 days, you may want to leave the cilantro out because the cilantro tends to dull a bit. It takes off that bright green look. So oftentimes I'll make the salsa and then I'll add the cilantro right as I'm getting ready to serve it again. Great question. That was exciting.
That was exciting. Now I'm really ready to play.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so that we will do. Whew. So we have our
camera so that we can see, because one of the things that I love about this class is not just the cooking, but it's seeing the plating, because it's something that doesn't always come naturally for home chefs.
Right. So we have these beautiful vegetables that are beautifully caramelized. They've kind of cooled just a bit, which is fine to do. You can always pop them back into the oven. I love them at this temperature. We're going to do a little bit of a mounding of those to the side of the plate. And then we're going to take our salsa and...
Okay, so we're gonna do one of your classic swooshes. Is that what I'm
add that
expecting?
beautiful, beautiful sauce. We're gonna just do just that. Just a
beautiful.
little swoosh, because that smear is what gives kind of the bed then for the chicken. We're gonna take the chicken breast and lay it right up against the vegetables into that little swoosh.
Okay.
And top it with your pineapple salsa, and all of a sudden say, oh my goodness, I am in the Caribbean,
Wow.
because it could not be better.
Oh, I
Beautiful.
can't wait to see what other people have done and what they've pulled together, how they've plated. Just beautiful.
And from start to finish, exactly an hour.
Amazing.
Always our goal, right?
Yes.
I know. So, happy?
I am so happy. I can't wait to eat it.
I know, it's
And
great.
like we said last class, it was just so fun hearing your experience. So whether you were cooking with your girlfriends or whether you had, and I'm jealous of a few of the people that do have this going on tonight.
Yes.
They've made their Valentines, their significant others do all the prep work and cutting.
Ah.
And so they just got to cook.
That's
And
beautiful.
so we give you big thumbs up for that one, and we hope that it's turned out great. Whatever this night may be, whatever this week, we hope that it's a celebration of delicious food for you and relationship and love.
Absolutely, and food always makes it so much better when it's delicious, great tasting, and great for you.
Yes.
And that's the PS Flavor mission, actually. So,
Hooray.
cheers. So
Cheers.
great. Love you all. We'll see you next month.
Yes, on March 13th at 6 o'clock in your kitchen.